Hello everyone on the internet and thanks for tuning in.
And welcome to another episode of Toku Bros. Please follow, like, and subscribe to us here on Facebook, Instagram, and Reddit.
As well as our Discord server and Twitter at Toku Bros 71. Myself, RyuKiva of RyuKiva Toku. I am on Facebook, Instagram, Patreon, Discord, Reddit, Twitter, and my own YouTube.
And I, Dragon Zeron of the Tokusatsu Media Center via Facebook, Instagram, Discord, Patreon, and YouTube. Thank you for tuning in to today's Ultra Talks.
Ultraman Z!
No shorter can die! Well, no. I don't know. Okay.
I don't
So,
think you do know. But what we do know is that Ultraman Z finished just after Christmas. So
right before Christmas.
just before Christmas, and so we are now doing a whole roundup of those last few episodes, as well as maybe a quick look back at the actual 25 episodes itself. But firstly, let's talk quickly about the rumoured Ultraman series for this
Trigger.
coming year, Ultraman Trigger. So I'll be honest, all I've heard is the name. Like, I saw a couple of details, I saw a couple of the names that were, like the Ultramen that they're supposed to be bringing back for Ultraman Trigger, but I'm a bit vague on the details. Do you have any more details on it?
Yes, I do. So basically, they're saying that this might actually be a sequel to Ultraman Gaia, which aired back in the early 1999, I think. And they're basically trying to do something with that. And then I also heard rumors that their base is going to be inside a monster or something. Which
Inside a
again,
monster, so kind of, because I know one thing I remember reading is how, like, only a few Ultramen have, like, human hosts kind of thing. So
yeah,
you're saying they're going to do the same for the monsters? The kaiju?
no, it's going to be like more like the human base itself is actually inside the monster. If that monster gets destroyed, the Earth gets destroyed. Basically, I don't know how it works. It sounds weird. I've never seen Ultraman Guy, despite it being on Crunchyroll. So
Okay, I mean, like, I guess even as we have completed Ultraman Z, I guess myself definitely, like, I'm going to be watching Ultraman Mebius at some point in the next month or two. So I'm looking to make this year maybe a little bit more Ultraman based, even if I'm not a massive fan of Ultraman, to be honest, as well as Gridman. So, shall we lock on straight to episode 21? So,
yeah,
this is where we left off. So, we are reviewing episodes 21 to 25 specifically. So, episode 21, what can I say? Like, I felt the episode was a bit dry, mainly as there was no comedy in it, and it was just pure plot progression. It just also
but it's
seemed.
something that we
Okay.
needed though. Like I think we needed like some more plot progression because we didn't really see that much with George in the first place. Like we barely saw the higher ups coming in, basically like bossing everybody around, and like the old man from Wizard, he was barely used in the show, and as we see in the later episodes, he gets taken over by Cerebro, and like
Yeah,
basically
I
all.
mean, again, we will get to those points as we talk about those later episodes. I mean, because it also just seemed weird that the evil spirit that seemed to possess a random person, Cerebro, and
Yeah.
yet all the other authoritative figures were acting like some real bad guys anyway. I mean,
Yeah,
namely
like that
that
woman.
woman who was in charge of that new setup. But again, I'm not too sure whether that was specifically in this episode.
If I was
But
a member of George, I would have pimp slapped her. To be honest with
ah,
you, like
well,
she just seemed like
well, be careful. Time's up and me too, etc. But still,
sure.
but I'll say, again, like, maybe it'll make more sense down the line. But otherwise, the fight scenes in this particular episode seemed okay, but nothing extraordinary in my opinion. The space scenes were standard, even. Like, nothing stood out, but the destructive nature of this D4 cannon that was all about, this episode was all about, was pretty mental. But that was one hell of an ending, with both Ultraman and again the General Command acting like the bad guys.
Yeah, I got a lot of Kamen Rider Drive vibes from the movie Surprise Future. I don't know if you remember.
I no, see, like, you're bringing in Kamen Rider Drive into this, which I felt, like the Future Drive movie, I actually felt was semi decent, but Like here, I probably wouldn't necessarily compare it to some because again, like this is just an episode. Whereas obviously Surprise Drive and Kamen Rider Drive, they put a lot of effort into Kamen Rider Drive, but
Hmm.
I wouldn't
And there are a lot of Kamen
necessarily
Rider
put
references in
them
the
on
line.
like a comparable level, in my honest
Hmm.
opinion.
But there are a lot of plot details as we go along that actually do reference quite a lot of Kamen Rider like storylines and stuff. And I'm like, I know this, so like so I felt like they were definitely shoehorning some stuff from the other tokusatsu shows that were airing at the time of Ultraman. So
I get you.
it's
I get
definitely
you.
possible because I genuinely think that they were trying to because Ultraman has always been its own thing, but I think it's about time it gets some references from others like tokusatsu stuff because they already paid tribute in Ninja to Ultraman by doing the Ultra Rise scene. So it's about time they bring in some plot points from like Kamen Rider. So.
Well, I mean, again, like I think it's kind of funny how Ultraman inspires Toei, like Tsubaraya inspires Toei, and Toei
Mhm.
inspires Tsubaraya. I mean, there's no kind of getting
Not
away from
about it,
that,
yeah.
in my opinion. But
They're
let's
the only
move.
ones that make like big time tokusatsu, so
Sure. I
like
mean, let's move
Toei
on. Let's move
or
on to episode 22. Let's move on to episode 22. So, like, for me, this had such a different vibe for all the obvious reasons. But I felt, like, because again, this is like after the whole storage shutdown thing. But I
Mhm.
felt there was a lot of stretching the fictional realm as per usual for a kids show, especially around timing and stuff. But it just seemed a bit vague that they made such a previously big monster arc that they then just made it a repeat for a filler episode monster.
Mhm. Like I wish they would explore the Devil Splinters more because we really didn't really see anything about the Devil Splinters. You know what I mean? I think we only got like 2 or 3 episodes in all with them being mentioned. And this would have been a better episode had they mentioned one of those monsters up a part of Devil Splinters.
I
Unless
mean,
it's
to be
been.
fair, I mean, like, the one thing that Ultraman Z sets about is how, like, the Ultraman lore, like, I keep mentioning this in our monthly talks, the Ultraman lore is just so deep with all these various kaiju that it's very difficult, like, saying, oh, mention this one, mention this, that one. It just seemed weird that they gave such random roles, as well as for the monsters, all the way to General Command that just set up this whole new unit just to then recruit everyone all over again. As they
Mhm.
made it seem at the beginning, it was a lot more than 3 days, and yet the fight scenes on the ground were good, but the fight scenes
Mhm.
with Sevenger were nostalgic and just made it seem
Yeah.
pointless for all the previous power ups. Of course, Yoko was super hot as per, and
I
there
love
were
Yoko.
some
She's like
decent
the
model
best
shots,
character.
but also bad ones too.
Hmm. Like I do like I do wish they would have like I do enjoy the robots and stuff. I like get other Sentai vibes and stuff. But I do feel like this was a bit shoehorned and I would have liked to see them try to combine them more, cause so.
No, I get you.
Or
So
they even do like a sacrifice for one of the robots, where they have it blow up with one of the monsters while taking it down. That would have been really cool. I would have loved to see something like that.
sure. So moving on to episode 23. Now, I felt apart from the amazing fight scenes that we had here, there was
Hmm.
a lot of plot holes and continuity issues here. So to start with the fact that they showed the general commander did make sense, but it implies too many things about Cerebro. And yet it was all one big cliche that there was at least one person not telling them to do something. Then there was the whole cliche about the press knowing something was off, yet everything seemed to get the green light. With little or no check. I mean, any thoughts on this?
Yeah, I do agree. I do wish they would have seen something happening because we already have seen them arrest the guy Cerebro first take over, and then then they got the other guy. It's like somebody on the higher ups actually knew what he was doing. And they saw something was up. They didn't even think that they were captured. And that makes it very I don't know. It just felt like Cerebro is not really that they didn't know what to do really with Cerebro in the first place,
I
you
don't
know.
know. I'll disagree with that. I mean, like, because Cerebro, I mean, on one hand, had such a good premise, and
Hmm.
yet, but then the kind of having Cerebro go around, but then, like, I'll talk about episode 25 in a moment, but like, just kind of the way they kind of made him jump around, I can kind of see your point, but there was so much potentially good storyline they could have done with Cerebro. I mean, like,
I would also have liked to see.
like, once the fighting was underway, it was still really good, and that was one hell of a cliffhanger at the end of episode 23. I mean, Yoko in hand, Ultrazoid, Zero Power, look, how it all looked, how this, like, new robot looked, etc. It was all, again, it had so much promise, in my opinion.
Hmm. Like that, I would have loved to see Ultrazord did
Zero.
more of a hero robot instead of a like a plot device, you know, for the villain, the
True.
final
I'll
villain.
agree with that.
And I felt like that was just like, you know, oh, we made Ultraman Zero a bad guy, you know. It just doesn't fit. I would have preferred definitely for it to have been good for quite a bit before becoming bad, you know, or even have all the robots turn bad at the end, you know. That would have been, I think, a better plot choice to me if I was the writer. So, because
The
I would
rider.
rather,
Yeah, it's
right,
alright, carry on.
that's what you said. So I would have definitely thought it would have been a better way to see Ultraman versus his friends, you know, like if the Cerebro was able to split off from a few people and been able to control all those robots and have Ultraman Z destroy them all, you know, in like one big battle, you know, and I felt like that could have been probably a better, more not safer, but just a better plot device to have pushed into the finale. You know what I mean? So.
Yeah, I mean, like, so, like, going into the penultimate episode, episode 24. So, like, so going into that final two episodes, that, the way that you were saying about how it pushed towards the end and that, like,
Mhm.
I felt episode 24, that this was more like a continuation of stuff that didn't make sense. But actually, the
Mhm.
dark vibe was something that I really liked. And it just seemed that they're constantly trying to make Yoko hotter all the time. I don't know if that's just me as a guy.
Yeah, like Yoko's hot as fuck, and I do wish her actress the best in like an actor in her acting career because she does definitely. I definitely see her getting big in a few years. You know what I mean? Because she has the potential to do that, and like. And I also like what's the other yo something
Yuka.
Yuka. I also see her trying to push them off. But I don't know if you saw that Yoko also got taken over by Cerebro in this episode.
Yeah.
And I did not like that at all. In fact, I kind of
No,
hated
see, I mean, as much as cliche as
it.
it was, I actually
Here,
liked it.
no, let me explain. Here's why I hated it. Because we saw her basically coming from like basically doing her best as the pilot, you know, and still being loyal to storage even after all of her friends like left and stuff.
But for
And
me,
then
that's where the
she ended
twist was
up
good.
becoming a villain. Yeah, that's where it became good. But then they have like Cerebro takes her over, and I'm like, why
I
though? Like,
mean, the one thing like, it's kind of like a halfway meeting you on this, but like, I'll just say, like, this final arc, it did seem to heavily involve her, which is justified, as I really liked her character anyway. Not just because she's hot, but, like, as you kind of praised her, she
no.
played a really good character, and really well as well. And like
Mhm.
the continuation of Haruki's, so like talking about the other actor, our main actor, like the continuation of Haruki's ethos to care about life as the return, like you see the return of the Red King with its egg has no end. I mean, the
Mhm.
end, Destros was insane and has at least a semi decent story behind it. I mean, it hit a few cliche notes, as I already mentioned, about
What did you
but
think
this
of the
time
design of
around
it, though?
humankind and that. Say that again?
What did you think of the design of Distros?
Yeah, I thought that was kind of like insane. I'm like, bruh. To be fair, like to give Destros's due, but like when it comes to like the whole clambering for power, that's kind of where it establishes itself, and it would eventually be used to destroy itself. But with the twist that this alien Cerebro consumed, it's like it's for its own end, which again, it's very cliche, as I say.
Hmm. Like, I do wish we could have seen more of the old man as Cerebro, because that old man was like
Bucko,
freaking
yeah, he
alive.
was insane. I like, yeah, like I think everyone liked Bucko.
No, 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 not Baco. The
No,
other old man, the guy from Wizards.
oh him.
He
You
deserved
got an
better.
obsession with him, to be fair, though.
Like, he's a good actor. Like, I enjoyed his character in Kamen Rider Wizard with him having the power to make like rings and stuff. I felt like they just threw this guy to the side because why would he be in the credits if you're not only going to use him for like 6 or 7 episodes?
Maybe he had. I mean, again, bearing in mind he's an old man, he probably had COVID restrictions into how much he could act. Maybe.
Maybe that could have been the case, But I remember hearing that they're way better at COVID precautions than Toei is. So
Well, I mean, obviously we didn't mention anything. I mean, obviously we're only going to be starting mentioning COVID now, but like, obviously Japan is like really trying to get a grip on a sort of new wave of COVID anyway. But
Mhm.
this was obviously recorded a little further back, but like with the change of prime minister over there was like people are kind of like really on edge over, well, worldwide anyway.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, so like coming back to Ultraman, let's talk about the final episode. So, episode 25, there were a lot of cliche feelings to this feel good happy ending.
Yeah,
With
I got a lot of 01 vibes at the end as
no,
well.
no, see, no, like I wouldn't compare 01 to this at all. Like, because yeah, like I actually liked 01's ending, just throwing
Same
that
here.
out there. But to me, like again, it's like for this, it was like very cliche, but it had like a few good scenes included in the opener. And it placed some sort of randomness in the editing, but I actually liked the camaraderie of everybody in this episode.
I also like
Even if I
Ultimate Trigger.
found like, because the one thing I noticed is like you see how Juggler was like all kind of running the show and like being like, oh, I'm actually a good guy now. But to me, it's like, because I knew him with long hair, but when he had that cap on, it was like, because he had a haircut. So, but actually, I think in one of the scenes you see him kind of whip his hat off and his hair falls down. So I'm just
Hmm.
like, it's like the hat magicked hair out for him. But
Yeah.
still, like, yeah, it must have been one big hat. But I really didn't get a proper explanation that Haruki was indeed able to transform again because he was supposed to be die or something. That plus, I love the theme that they could use the old robots to fight the strongest battles, which shows their evolution as pilots, right?
Hmm. Or they make use of the old equipment and just seeing all four of the robots together for one last battle, it would have been really cool. I would have wanted one of them to at least explode, with one of the pilots like escaping, of course, but with those robots being sacrificed to basically try to like take down Destros. I would have enjoyed to see some more like explosions, with those robots.
I mean, like, because, it all comes down to, like, when it comes to everything around these robots, it is down to Old Man Bucko. But I'm not sure how I felt about, like, that ugly thing that Yuka then caught at the end.
That's the
Which,
river.
like, yeah, which has been causing havoc as a menace in the entire series. Because, like,
Like,
I
why
mean, it's a
catch it when you
very sort of haphazard ending, in my opinion. Like,
It's like you're trying to give details for a second story, because you heard about them making a potential sequel to Ultraman Z,
I'll be honest, I haven't.
Oh, okay. So basically, on Japanese Twitter, it was actually trending for like few days after that ended, and they were wanting a 50-episode series for Ultraman
I
Z.
heard that now. I heard that like they wanted to extend the number of episodes, but okay.
Yeah, so we
So
might see Ultraman Z.
let's wrap up the whole series, shall we? Did you want to fire this off?
Yeah, Haruki, he is probably one of the best Ultra we've had in a while. So probably Ultraman Orb itself. Ultraman Z, I never felt anything, but Ultraman Z, though, this Haruki actor did a really good job conveying the emotions that we wanted to see, and seeing him deal with a lot of things and still be able to come out on top. It would show the humanity of the human host, and that's what I genuinely loved about it. But I do wish we gotten more of him with Ultraman Z himself. like talking and stuff. I would have loved to see more of that dynamic because they did definitely have a good dynamic together, but we didn't see that often. Um, but in Yoko, I would have like I enjoyed. I loved her character. Just her being the naturally strong girl and stuff. And like I do enjoy the little love story they put in at the end with her and Haruki.
I wouldn't
I
call that strictly love story, but they really implied it that they could be a good couple. They did imply
yeah.
that heavily, though.
I do hope they maybe come back to it. Maybe he'll get together with her in a couple of years, in a sequel. I would have loved to see them because we did see Ultraman Z fly off into space. Which, by the way, when he collapsed on the ground before he fly off, that was pretty fucking funny. You gotta admit.
I don't know about funny, but all right. Let me roll out a review of all this. So, like again, not being so heavily familiar with Tsubaraya or Ultraman, like I bearing in mind there's only so much you can do with that Ultraman look without kind of deviating too much from it. So some of the looks that they pulled off, I mean, especially with the original Alpha Edge, it actually had like a bit of a thicker metal feel. So I liked, I kind of liked that spin. And then obviously with some of the power ups like Delta Smash, I believe they kind of added more color to it. So like talking about the suits to begin with, bearing in mind there's only like 3 or 4, despite the fact that they implied that Ultraman Z using like a medal system of previous Ultramen, they could have gone on for infinity, but but I like the fact that they specifically chose the fact that Ultra Zero is having its 10th anniversary, so they did all these heavy ties to Ultraman Zero, a series I'm not familiar with at all. But
Well,
when it comes
Zero wasn't really a series at all. It was only a movie series.
right, okay, well, so coming on to the characters like Haruki, I generally liked his sort of childish demeanor. Like I found that quite comical. And like when it comes to Yoko, yeah, as hot as she is, like on one hand, like she was like a kind of positive character without a doubt. I'll only say that maybe it's a touch cliche that we've got like a tomboyish character kicking the main guy's ass. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, it's like I'll kind of say I feel mixed, even though there's nothing inherently bad about the character. Yuka, I'd probably say I felt a bit more of a stronger vibe because it's encouraging like women to be a
People to
bit more
geek out.
intelligent and a bit more scientific. Da, 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 da. So
Mm-hmm.
like, I can kind of hit that, but I would still say like when it comes to the fight scenes, it was hit and miss for Ultraman Z. But then I will give it props for its mod, like especially in the 21st century, giving it props for its model work. CGI, like again, it
It's
becomes harder
alright.
and
I get
harder. It
like
becomes harder and harder to do like amazing CGI year on year and to be better than like any other product or any previous product in the last 5 years.
I'll
So
say that it's
so
better
like
than
they
Toei.
did semi decent. Say that again.
I say it's better than Toei CGI because Toei CGI can get pretty bad.
Yeah, I mean, like when it comes to Toei, that's hit and miss, and like, but I'll still say, maybe there's a little bit more consistency with Ultraman Z here.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, as well, like other things, like I would actually recommend this to any other Ultraman fan.
Yeah, like as a
But I
beginning
will still
series.
say that I felt like being not that familiar with Ultraman myself, that it kind of went over a little bit in my head. So I wouldn't. So like, there's even the few series of Ultraman that I have watched. There are actually other series better than this to start on with. So I wouldn't necessarily recommend this for someone who's just getting into the series personally.
Mm-hmm. Like I would disagree with that because I thought it was a pretty good way to introduce them because it didn't have that many connection to other Ultraman series. Just by like except for like Ultraman Ace and Ultraman Zero and even Ultraman G. But even then, those characters weren't really there all the time. Except for Juggler. But you have to watch Ultraman Orb, which is the previous anniversary show of Ultraman. That was actually a part of Ultraman like he was a part of the 50th anniversary of Ultraman Orb, and his
Oof.
character was a pretty. I enjoy Juggler. He's always this mysterious guy who's willing to be good, you know, because in the orb he was a bad guy for most of the time before he turned, and
Sure.
now he's a good guy, and I he did really good as a good guy as well, and his actor is really good. And I would love to see him try to do some Kamen Rider stuff because he definitely has the potential to be on Kamen Rider as a either like a side villain or a main rider. You know, like when if they were to do a show with a couple of new actors, I would definitely see him playing like an older Kamen Rider. You know,
I mean,
so
my final thought for Ultraman Z will actually go to someone we've not actually mentioned, and that is Beliarok. So Beliarok to me, like they could have introduced Beliarok earlier, not necessarily as the weapon that he was used with the Orb Medal, but
mhm.
yeah, because they talk about the character that he's based off of, Belius
Belial,
Atrocious, yeah,
yeah,
Belial
Belial.
Atrocious.
No, no, it's
So
not
like
Belial.
yeah, they obviously talk about
Ultimate Belial.
Belius to an extent, Belial to an extent, but the actual Belia Rock could have been something else before becoming a weaponized sword. And again, like, there was just such a quirk to him that I felt could have resonated a little bit like a little bit sooner than when they did introduce him, rather than all these clip episodes. And again, obviously about COVID, there's so many clip episodes. I don't know how often they do that, but
They
still,
do that,
but
like
still,
most
like
shows.
they could have done more stuff with Belia Rock than these clip shows. So it's neither here nor
Yeah.
there. So you
Well, the
give your
thing is,
final thoughts
Ultraman
on this
Z is kind
series.
of known for like doing only like two clip shows. So this year was a little bit longer, you know. But I'm
Mm.
not gonna hold them up to it. I understand why they did it. So, like in all, I'd probably give Ultraman Z an A plus. Like I genuinely enjoyed it. I would definitely watch it, go back and watch it again when it becomes out on CD, DVD and stuff. Cause
Blu-ray.
yeah, whatever, like whatever Shout Factory or whoever Mill Creek decides to do with that series. I definitely would rewatch it again because it's a good story. It's a very well-rounded story. You know, despite its plot points that not being mentioned and some characters kind of get shoehorned into the side. I definitely watch it again. And maybe maybe we'll see more Ultraman Z in the future.
Who
Maybe in a couple
knows?
of years because it was a good show, and I genuinely do hope we get to see those characters again. So
No worries. Well, everybody, thank you all for watching us here at Toku Bros. Do please check us out on our social medias. The links are in the description below. And, we'll be giving you more Ultraman and possibly Gridman in the near future. So until next time, fist through the cam.